Michael, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure to have you on campus. You brighten us.
Oh, thank you.
You're a shining light in this industry, and as an all boys environment, you bring us love and peace, and it's a humbling experience when you're
Thank
here.
you. Mutual.
Michael, we've talked for years and years now about boys' education because you've been doing this for over 30 years. And you're a leading advocate for boys and girls education, interestingly enough.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, we're an all-boys institution. What's happening with boys? Are boys being left behind? Give us the current state of affairs.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. They are. I think there's a new consciousness over the last year or two, maybe three. People are beginning to finally get it that we have a mental health crisis. We have an educational crisis, even an employment crisis, right? Not as many of them employed. A college crisis with them. College is mainly more female than male now. And, so I think people are awakening to it. The being left behind, I think, connects to nature, nurture, and culture, to all three. Nature-wise, I don't think our culture understands the male brain well. A lot of the scaffolding for raising boys into men, which really, from a neurological perspective, means raising the male brain into an adult male brain, let's say. A lot of that scaffolding, is collapsing. And then on the nurture side, that means that as parents are nurturing and grandparents and, the whole three-family system is trying to nurture a boy, it doesn't understand it. It doesn't understand this guy. Kind of doesn't understand where the gaps are. And then as the third family, what I call it, like education, as they're trying to teach boys, they haven't been trained in the male brain. There's a lot of politics around why that we can discuss, right? They're not allowed to learn about the male and the female brain. And so by default, traditional school systems are set up better for the female brain, and the male brain is left behind because it doesn't learn in that sit still frontal lobe. Let's talk, let's do a worksheet. I mean, that's not how males have learned for a million years. So yeah, they're being left behind. Yep.
So let's talk about the point you just made. Why aren't we talking more? If you learned anything post-COVID, it's always about the science, right? So let's talk a few minutes about the science of the boy brain and the girl brain.
Yeah. Okay. So for folks who don't know, the XX and the XY, the genetic markers control not just physiologic, but also neurologic development. So there are 4 billion people on Earth who are male, and there are 4 billion who are female. So there's 4 billion ways to be female and 4 billion ways to be male, right? So there's a lot of variety. And because of the XX and the XY, those chromosomes trigger in utero while the baby's fetus in utero triggers the differentiation of the male and the female brain from one another, so that you get 4 billion ways to be male and 4 billion ways to be female. They're not the same. So the brain differences are really robust, and they start in utero. And when I give talks, I show MRIs of fetal brains. So these are brains at 8 and 9 months, still in utero. They're still have that capability to MRI, and you can already see the male-female brain difference. So that's the nature part, and that stuff is really robust, so that when kids come out, I think parents intuit it. I think parents are the first to intuit that something's going on with boys and girls. They're somewhat different, and a lot of variety. Again, I'll keep saying that, a lot of variety. But still, parents kind of go, oh, that's a boy or that's a girl. And then that continues all the way through life. Male-female brain difference. So a few of the brain differences that might be known: males do words on the left primarily, females do words on both sides. So those 4 billion females, they're doing words on both sides. Those 4 billion males are primarily doing words on the left. Females are using 10 times more white matter activity. So that is connecting the dots. It moves very fast through the brain and connects dots. Males do things with more gray matter activity, which is in splotches. So they're in one splotch and they're not connecting all those dots. And then another well, a few of them. Another really good one is the hormonal. Males have 10 to 20 times the amount of testosterone running through their bloodstream, which also means their brain. Females have more estrogen, of course, and oxytocin, bonding chemicals. So males and females even bond differently. And, as a ANA knows, as a boys' school knows, males bond the way males bond.
Right.
And that's its own world. So biochemical, neurological, structural, functional, all those differences are robust through life.
So we're in this paradigm right now where we seem to deny, or at least we have for some time, denied this natural component. And we sort of exist in this cultural realm. Now, in your most recent book, Boys: A Rescue Plan, you go through that in detail.
Right.
Right. So talk a little bit about the war, if you will, between nature and culture.
Yeah. One of the reasons that I, in my work in the Gurian Institute, that we talk about nature, nurture, and culture is to cover all three, right? To not get stuck in one of them. But yes, our culture is often very stuck in the culture part. And the culture part grows from the last 50 to 60 years of feminist theory, initial second wave feminist theory, which was there's a patriarchy, males are bad, females are victims of this oppressive patriarchy. The only way to get equality is to have sameness. So what we're going to have to do is say that males and females are the same. And if we can make them the same, then we're not going to have an oppressor and oppressed. It was an interesting academic concept, but that's not how one gets equality, really. One has to understand the people and then give them equal rights. And males and females are not the same, but of course they have equal rights. But that stuck, and that really stuck in academe. And so then the big three is academics, government, and media. What starts in academe, right, in colleges, starts there, and then government and the media use it because those sociologists put out studies, they get used by government and media. And that has been that strain that keeps getting recreated. The most recent recreation of it is toxic masculinity. So instead of saying males are patriarch and all that, the latest one is males are toxically masculine. There's always a thread of this that comes from academe and goes into government and media. And it's a constant battle because, of course, people like me, I've written a number of books on girls, on women, for the corporate sector. I mean, I'm an advocate for everyone, obviously. And I'm always fighting it. I'm always saying to people, your vision of this is so culture-based. It's based on sociological opinion from people sitting behind a desk. And they're not in the schools, and they're kind of pretending that nothing's going on, or the cure is make everyone the same, which is impossible. That can't happen. So I've been in that battle for certain in 1989. So whatever that is, 36 years, I've been in the battle on that.
So given that period, as you've seen it progress, in our current state, are you seeing a glimmer of hope that we're getting, that people are starting to reflect and understand, hey, these differences are real and we have to cater to them? And are you seeing a movement in that direction?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say yes, because I do think that
But you're
there's
hesitant.
more, movement. Once you said movement, I'm like, is there a movement? I'm going to say yes. Okay. Because when the Wonder of Boys came out in 1996, right after that, USA Today and New York Times and these folks were like, okay, this book has created a movement. We now have a movement.
Yeah.
Right. And it was connected to The Wonder of Boys because that was the first book that had come out, a national book on boys.
It made its way into The Sopranos.
Right. It was in The Sopranos in episode 7, I think, of season 1. I was watching The Sopranos. Okay, that's an aside, but I didn't know it was in The Sopranos. And my wife and I were watching it and went, what? Anyway, that's an aside. So, okay. So, what does it take for it to be a movement? I mean, in that 30 years, since let's say it was in The Sopranos, whatever that is, since 1996, so that's 30 years, I think there's more consciousness for sure. Absolutely. Because then there was one book, The Wonder of Boys, but then by 98, there were more, and then 99 and 2000, and now more books. And so, yeah, I guess I'll say there's a movement. And most of the movement of sensitizing our culture about boys, I think most of the movement is more that academic big three, you know, if males cried more, if they talked about their feelings more, everything would be good. It's still that kind of thin academic approach. And one of the reasons I say that is because it's still considered politically incorrect to teach teachers in schools of ed, to show the brain scans like I show in schools when I go to schools. I'm showing brain scans that are available to every academic who's teaching education, either grad or undergrad, could show these same brain scans and say to their young people who are becoming teachers, look, male and female brain clearly learn differently. Look at these brain scans. But they don't, because it's not politically correct. So is it a movement? I'm going to say yes, but does it have a long way to go? Yeah.
So here on our campus, of course, we're a center of excellence for the Gurian Institute, and we are obviously passionate about strategies and techniques that are boy-friendly, that are boy-brain science. Let's talk a little bit about that. You've spent many, many years not just pointing out the evidence that's fairly clear to people who really want to study it about these differences, but how to react to these differences, how to cater to them and get a better result. Let's talk a little bit about those strategies and techniques once you recognize, because you spent many years not just saying, look, here's a problem, but here's how to react to the problem.
Right. Yeah. After Wonder of Boys, soon after, about a year later, I got a call from Center for Safe Schools in Missouri, and they said, let's set up a pilot and let's test your boy-friendly strategies. Let's test them and gather data. And so for 2 years, we did a pilot from 97 to 99 in 6 school districts in Missouri. And I taught, and they taught, the Gurian boy-friendly strategies, and they're boy-friendly and girl-friendly, right? And then the book Boys and Girls Learn Differently came out of that, right? It was the report of those 2 years. And it's like 150 strategies. And what the good thing is that what works for boys can work for girls. What works for girls does not always necessarily work for boys, but what works for boys just about all the time can work for girls. And that's something we can talk about. It's a very interesting thing. The female brain being that much more flexible brain, the male brain being set up differently. So, and the other good thing is that when teachers are trained in Boys and Girls Learn Differently, which is what became kind of the tag for the Gurian strategies, the test scores go up for both boys and girls. The grades go up for both boys and girls, and the discipline referrals to the vice principal, head of school, those go down for both boys and girls in co-ed, and of course, girls and boys in single sex. So clearly everyone is being served, right? Clearly by developing strategies, we're not leaving girls out because their grades go up, et cetera. And so some of those strategies are like, making sure that every 10 to 20 minutes, students have the option of getting up and moving around. And if it's a boys' school, we don't give them the option. They do a brain break, right? Every 10 to 20 minutes. They're going to get up and move around for 30 seconds. And this is an example of one that boys need that girls don't necessarily need. Why? Because for males to learn, they need cerebellum involvement. And that's the doing center at the base of the brain. To get that involved, they get up and moving. That's involved. It shoots signaling up so that the top of the brain, which is where much of the learning is happening, is activated. If they don't get that, the top of the brain and the midbrain go to sleep. They go to a rest state in males. In females, they don't. A female can sit for half hour, 45 minutes, an hour. Her frontal is still working. So it benefits her to get up and move around. It's healthy, but you can see that it's not urgent for her, but it's for learning, but it's urgent for the boy. And so every 10 to 20 minutes, somewhere in there, let's give them a brain break. Visuals are another one. The male brain is a really visual graphic brain. It's not as word-oriented, even though there are guys like me who are really word-oriented, absolutely. But 1 in 5 exception rate. 4 out of 5 cases, we're going to see that the guys are not going to test out as well as the girls in their word use. Okay, so, but but it's a really visual brain, especially on the right. So we want to make sure, like here at A&A, there's, the schedule is visual. The teachers have the schedule up. It's visual. They've got colors. They've got all sorts of things up, graphics, pictures, because that's a way to get that brain working better. And even all the way back early in life, folks know if they want a little boy to remember the vocabulary word, they show him the picture. Whereas quite often, pictures are good for little girls too, but quite often you say it a few times and the girl remembers it, but the boy doesn't unless he has the picture. So that's another set of them. And then a last one I'll say, and please ask me more if you want, is playground. Playgrounds have become really anti-male and male development. And so we're constantly training, even in Head Start, training the teachers that, touch attachment involves fake karate kicks and jumping on each other and what's called rough-and-tumble play, that actually builds brain cells. We absolutely want rough-and-tumble play. They'll learn better in class if they can do rough-and-tumble play on the playground. But we got to educate these teachers, because otherwise they think if the boys touch each other, then that's illegal. Don't touch. You have to use your words. Well, of course, use your words is going to work better for the female brain, especially young. And folks are not understanding what touch attachment is. Touch attachment does involve aggression, not violence, but aggression, right? Aggressiveness that nurtures. So I call it aggression nurturance. So that's a whole other place of strategies that we work in.
So let's follow up on those points. First, what I hear you say is that boy education in particular can be very messy.
Messy, yeah.
It is. And to help boys, it nurtures them quite a bit to let it be messy, because it certainly enhances their learning. So if a boy comes through that environment where he's allowed to best experience that learning strategy, how is that inhibiting him when he moves off to college, where he walks into a lecture hall with 400 students, and is that part of the reason that we're seeing these statistics that so much favor women in graduation from universities?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. Yeah, structured mess is a good thing for guys, because like look at Army and Navy. There's a military structure, right? Structure is good for guys. And ritualized experience is really good for development of male brain, and structure is good. Okay, so but within the structure, they're allowed to be messy, right? And that's the way to do it. Structure the hierarchies, structure the rites of passage, structure the rituals, and then within the learning process and the play process, because play is learning, allow the mess, and then they have to develop resilience, right? They're developing resilience from the structure that compels them to act a certain way, yes. And they're developing resilience in the mess, because they have to clean it up, they have to interact, they have to teamwork, they have to compete, and all that develops resilience. So structured mess is really best. And I don't see a disadvantage. And here's why. Some folks will say, okay, if you have them do brain breaks, I think this is what you're asking. If you have them every 10 to 20 minutes of brain break, and they use more visuals and all this, but then they go to college and they have to sit still for 50 minutes at a time, one after another. Here's what we actually find. What we actually find is that because their core learning development was so much more astute, so much better laid out for them, and they had so much less failure at that from pre-K to college, their self-esteem is higher, or what we call their learning self-esteem is higher, and they'll adapt. They can adapt, and what they'll do is they'll get up and move around, and very few college professors care if you sit in the back and you get up and move around while you're taking notes. So they'll have learned, okay, what I need is I better get up and move around, because guys can tell. Like you and I can tell what a rest state is. Yeah. And it's hard for women because they don't go to this brain rest state that males go to. And you've seen the brain scans that I show, right? When males go to a rest state, when they're bored, most of all of this is blank. When females go to a rest state, when they're bored, the brain is still well lit up. So that's true of all races, all cultures. I mean, these are transcultural brain differences that come in on the X and the Y. So that's why everyone shares these. So guys know when their brain is going to a rest state, and they've learned from having been well educated, that, okay, I can get up and move around and get out of my rest state. Or they'll like tap quietly to try to get out of the rest state, because they know once they get out of the rest state, whatever that professor is saying, they will not retain, can't retain. So it actually is fine if we can alter education on the way up. They're learning self-confidence, their, grades, test scores. I mean, everything's higher. So by the time they go to college, they then adapt based on what they've learned, and they perform fine. Yeah, I don't think the depressed male attendance and matriculation in college, I don't think it's very much connected at all to some people are trying to teach them differently in high school. It's more all sorts of other issues which we could talk about.
Right. So parents struggle mightily with this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're desperately trying to get more information, and it's difficult to obtain. It's not easy for them to immediately find all of the Gurian books that you've written, or to even, and this is part of, I think, that big three comment you made earlier of the media doesn't necessarily promote a lot of what you're talking about. It does come to light every once in a while.
Yeah.
We see
Mm-hmm.
some more popular folks coming and talking about it. But parents struggle. We see, we understand it very much here because they're looking for solutions, and we happen to provide it. So, what's your advice? I mean, you hear it a lot, I know, from parents. What's your advice to them about working their way through the struggle and finding what they need as advocates, as they're being, citizen scientists for themselves?
Yeah. Citizen scientists. I'm begging every parent, every teacher, everyone to be a citizen scientist. Anything they read or hear, be a scientist about it and go, is that right? Let me do some observation to make sure that's right, And so everyone can be a citizen scientist. So Boys a Rescue Plan, of course, one of the reasons I and Sean wrote this is the last part of it has all these solutions. And one set of solutions is getting every parent team up with other parents. Like if your kids are going to a public school and you're a parent of a boy, your boy is having trouble in that class, you can absolutely bet that there are other boys in that class having trouble. Because remember, that teacher never got any training. So in male development or the male brain or very little. So team up. And then as you team up, observe, right? Become a scientist, because one of the things you do as a scientist is observe. So observe that environment, that classroom, other classrooms in the school, and with these other parents, and then have one or two of the parents on that team go on the district website and gather the data, disaggregate the data, because the data's there, and look by sex. Okay. And they call it gender, but it's really sex. Look by sex and say, okay, here are the test scores of the boys in 11th grade. Here are the test scores of the girls, or in eighth grade, or in 5th grade. And, just look at it. Oh my gosh, look how much better the girls are doing than the boys. So you've observed in the classrooms and seen boys having issues. You've observed in the hallways boys being constantly corrected for just touch attachment, and you have the data. And this book, Boys a Rescue Plan, Sean put a bunch of graphs people can use so they can fill it in. So then you have data from a number of data points, and you go into the principal as a team without being belligerent or anything. You just go into the principal and say, okay, we've done our science. Here it is. Here's our little précis of it, our little summary of it. And this school has a boy problem. And kind of the people in the school already intuited it, but they're very busy. And they're hoping that the fact that the boys are, failing more will kind of go away, or that there'll be some, like sometimes people will say, well, the problem will go away if we get more male teachers, and it won't. It won't. Male teachers are great, but that doesn't remove the problem. And most teachers are going to be female anyway. So, or as people will say, well, the problem will go away if we get more black male teachers. Okay. Another good thing to do. We should have more black male teachers. But, probably we'll get a 5% gain in the next 10 years. That's not going to solve the problem. What solves the problem, what we have data that shows solves the problem, is the whole system goes through systemic change. Over a 1-year period, these advocates, these parents, get the school to do boys and girls learn differently training. So now everyone is trained into how to best teach girls, best teach boys, and the whole gender spectrum. And then a year later, they gather their data and they go, oh, yeah, because that's the last piece of the science, right? Before, after, we got to gather the data afterward. That is the way I can, guarantee that works. Form this team, gather the data, go in, advocate, get training programs set up, PD programs set up so that the whole system learns, counselors, teachers, bus drivers, everybody, admin, and then a year later, look at the data. I see that as something that's highly replicable because the Gurian Institute's been doing it for 30 years, and anyone can use it. But that will take a little time because there is no quick solution.
Right.
Like 5% more male teachers is a quick solution, but it's not a solution.
So you said earlier, parents know, right? Even you say, well, parents know the difference for their boys and their girls as soon as they see them in a hospital, right?
Right.
We find, of course, that parents know, they understand that their boys aren't being serviced in these schools. That's why boys come here, right? We get those phone calls because they're going to say, this school is not educating my boy, or my boy is languishing, and I can see it. So those citizen scientists, when they finish their work, say, that's why we get a phone call and they say, look, we understand that you're a boy science or boy-friendly environment. They don't understand, I think, obviously don't have the depth of what you offer because so few people are privy to it. Of course, on our campus we are.
You are.
But we find a lot that when you put a boy in a boy-trained, a boy science environment, our teachers go through the Gurian Institute to be Gurian trained in strategy and technique, and they understand a boy, that a lot of those issues, if the boy was having these issues in school, they melt away. They're alleviated because the boy just recognizes the fact, and in a very sort of intuitive way. It's not very outward. It's just there's a comfort level that comes with the idea of being understood. Right. We recently talked about how boys can be actually more emotionally present in boy environments rather than co-ed environments. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that sort of unintuitive, right? How boys can be more emotionally available coming out of those environments. Because certainly people think that we are certainly in a boys' military boarding school, you'd think, oh, this boy is going to be so male toxic. it'll radiate all over the place. But it turns out that there's science, and you certainly have experience, and that's just simply not the case. I'd love for you to talk a little about it because it just seems so counterintuitive.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of things there that hit me is one, yes, people have a stereotype of just a boys' school, right? Which you've kind of gotten at, this stereotype that everyone's going to be getting hazed all the time, and they're going to get bullied, or it's like a therapeutic boarding school, which ANA is not, and so I know you all are always having to fight these stereotypes. Well, that's not this. We're a really, really supportive, emotionally supportive school. We're a social emotional learning school, which it is. And to the second part, this goes all the way back to like 1998. I published A Fine Young Man. And back then, I at this moment have forgotten the researcher, but there was a researcher a feminist researcher who set out and said, I'm a feminist researcher and I am going to interview wives, at that time, wives of men who went to co-ed school and wives of men who went to boys only, right? Same sex. And she said, I know what I'm going to find. I know what I'm going to find is that the men who went to co-ed are better emotionally, so better social emotionals, specifically better at naming their feelings or talking about their feelings with their spouse. And that's a high value target. We want males to talk about their feelings with their spouse, etc. Well, what she found by doing these sets of interviews is that in those cadres there, that the guys who went to boys' schools were more likely, their wives said, more likely to be better at talking about their feelings and the social emotionals than the guys who went to co-ed. So we talked because she was like wondering how this could be, and what we came up with is, and this has been replicated since then, because I know Leonard Sachs, who used to have the Single Sex Education Commission, he closed that down, but he's really good with it too, and he and his group did more research on this that keeps confirming it. When boys are in a boy-only environment, especially one like Army and Navy that's set up for like structured mess, right, that we talked about, they have no girls there to do their emotional work for them. And yes, there are some female teachers, of course, but most of their emotional work is going on not in the class with the female teacher. Most of their emotional work is going on in a male-only environment. And because there are no girls doing the work for them, as well as no moms there with them, right? They're here in a boy-only environment. Their mom's not here. So they have to do their own emotional work. If they feel something, they're right there, and there's other people around there, and they happen to be male, helping them, because this guy's going through it too, and this guy's going through it. And so they're bonding, and because they're so well bonded, they're safe, they feel safe, and they can do their emotional work. And without the girls doing it for them, who kind of take it over in the same way. And it's nothing wrong with girls. Right. The girls are living their emotional life, so it's all good. But in the same way, a mom, is the mom trying to help the guy do his emotional work, so but the mom's not there, the girls aren't there. And so we believe, and again, I think Leonard Sachs would replicate this, that in one of these safe boy environments like ANA is, they got to do their own work. And so by the time they grow up, right, because like at ANA, they're going 7th, 8th, 9th, they've got 6 years, let's say, boy, they become really emotionally adroit. And so by the time they would marry or couple, they're just better tuned to the core self. They're better tuned to self-awareness, to emotional vulnerability, and they're not afraid of it. They don't see emotional vulnerability as being a negative. But if they're in 7th grade and they're in a co-ed environment, and again, nothing wrong with a co-ed environment, but on this particular thing, if they're in a co-ed environment and they feel something, and this girl right here also feels it, and she takes it over, then they aren't learning as much about their own emotionality. So that, I believe, is why these successful single-sex environments are so good for these boys.
Almost counterintuitive.
Right, as it was for that researcher.
Exactly.
She was shocked to get this result.
Which was great that there was a tremendous amount of honesty there, right? That's fantastic.